So let's zip through these three risks that I want to talk about. The carbon bubble, I suspect you all know about. There's basically too much carbon in fossil fuels to burn, way too much to burn. I won't go through the details of this. It's from one of Carbon Tracker's reports, but it shows the statistics for quoted companies in the fossil fuel industries. And basically, you've got two options. If you look at this and you say, well, you know, they can't burn everything they've got as supposed assets, which, by the way, they book as though they're at zero risk of impairment whatsoever. And you can take your money out of fossil fuels. And increasingly, people are doing this. Big philanthropic foundations, the churches, the World Council of Churches, the cities, the campuses. There's something redolent of the boycott campaign in the days of apartheid in what's happening. The doctors recently, the British Medical Association, pulled out of all investment. So you can do that, and that's a powerful tool, and it's a growing tool in the world. It's a problem for the industry. But an even more powerful tool, we believe in Carbon Tracker, is to actually stay invested or keep some of your money invested and put pressure on the annual capital expenditure programs of the fossil fuel industry. And these we have quantified at Carbon Tracker in our 2013 report. And what you see there in the red circle is the capex going every year to fossil fuels. That's a $6 trillion punt over 10 years that policymakers will do precisely nothing about climate change. And even if you yourself don't believe in climate change, this is a risk that is being completely ignored in the capital markets and all its processes. And they are very vulnerable on this. They're vulnerable because it's almost incredible the way culturally they keep going. I don't have time to go through all the costs here, but let's just do the one at the top left. And this will come as a surprise if you haven't heard about it. Kashagan, it's in Kazakhstan. In Shell, this is known, of course, as cash all gone, because they found this oil field in 2000. They thought they could produce it for $10 billion. That's quite a lot, but doable if they all ganged up together. They thought it would take them 5 years, so it would come on stream by 2005. In 2013, after many technical problems, it eventually came on stream at a capex bill of $43 billion. Capital expenditure, actually the cost of doing the stuff, doing the operation. So at that point, everyone relaxed because oil is being produced and they're going to get their payback. 2 weeks later, they had to shut the whole thing down because the oil that they're producing is so toxically acidic that it's eating the pipework. So now, and you talk 50 billion here and 50 billion there, pretty soon you're talking serious money, right? Now they've got to fix all the pipes again, somehow to deal with this acidic oil, and will they even get this thing up and running? They say it's going to take 2 years. Arctic oil exploration. Shell began its program in 2013, and what did it do with its first outing? It crashed its drilling rig on the rocks in Alaska, an expensive misadventure. This is what's going on the frontier. This is what we're up against, and this is why they're in so much trouble. Shale, the shale narrative. This is not going to work. I'm going to make a firm prediction here today. This is a supposed boom. Most people think it is a boom, and it's going to go bust, a la financial crisis. 5 reasons for this in the UK. First of all, the economics. What you have to do when you're in the shale is drill lots of wells, because the drop-off in production is so fast. It's 80% over 3 years on average in the shale regions. That's why there are so many abandoned drilling spots there in Texas. Of course, it's desolate Texas. It doesn't matter too much. There's one active one in the front right. But this industry is losing money hand over fist because this is expensive drilling. And the top 15 oil and gas players in the shale have so far written off in assets $35 billion. This is all a matter of public record, but just try it out at dinner parties. The number of people that think this is a way to get prosperous, to exploit shale. The net debt accumulated by the top 110 oil companies last year alone was in excess of $100 billion. And it's cultural. They don't know what else to do. They're mostly aging men who've been doing this stuff all their lives. They can't stop. It's like a gambler in a casino. That's what's going on culturally. And it's on the record. It's being noticed. Bloomberg, is the US shale boom going bust? The drillers feast on junk debt to stay on the treadmill. Does this remind you of something? It's the mortgage-backed securities business in 2005 and 2006. Second reason it's not going to happen is because of the toxicity of the process. The Bush administration had to, if you don't know this, they had to completely exclude the frackers from the US Safe Drinking Water Act to have it happen. Now those chickens are coming home to roost. A lot of water is being used. A lot of toxic chemicals come in flow back to the surface. They have to be stored in these open ponds. And the stories are beginning to come out. Whole farms poisoned. And what the industry does is buy people off with large sums of money, provided they do a very important thing, which is to sign a gagging order. And this is happening right across the drilling areas in the States right now. This is what Mr. Cameron and Mr. Osborne want to export into Britain. Then it's not going to happen because of the fugitive emissions. The gas industry tell you they're better than coal in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, which they are, if you just measure the burning process. What they don't want you to measure is the amount of methane that leaks, and it leaks everywhere. It leaks from the wellhead, it leaks from the pipelines, it leaks all the way to the hob. Many of us believe that actually gas is going to prove to be worse than coal, and the amount of gas here is truly phenomenal, because what you see in that square box is a shale oil drilling region in North Dakota where they just simply flare the gas. They emit it to the atmosphere as carbon dioxide, but they burn it at the wellheads. And you can see it from space as though it's a city at night. The fourth reason this is not going to work is that it won't be exportable. You can do this stuff in Texas and North Dakota. It's really doubtful whether you can do it in leafy Sussex. Let's just have a look at, this is 1 mile now. This is the sweet spot in a shale drilling area in Texas, in the Barnett Shale. This is the Weald. Now, I live in the Weald, and there are photos to prove it. I'm taking my dog for a walk. He's broken his leg, which is very frustrating for a whippet in a bluebell wood full of rabbits. So I have to chase them for him. And the caption to the photo on the bottom right is faster, faster. But the point, that's not the point. The point is that if you look across the top pictures, the middle distance there is about 1 mile. So let's just go back and have a look at what that would look like if the shale was actually drilled in the way that Mr. Cameron and Mr. Osborne want. It's clearly just not going to happen. This was the first well they tried to drill in Sussex, not even a fracked well, it's a vertical well to sample the shale to see if it's frackable. There were thousands of its Balkans. Some of you may have been there. I was certainly there. There were many people on that demo who had never been on a demonstration in their lives, completely clearly. And it required half the Sussex police force just to deliver the drill pipes to the... This is just so not going to happen. And I think they actually know in their hearts, in their minds, these fracking companies, and they're just playing share value games. They're trying to hike their share price so that they can sort of get out, make some money, and head for the Bahamas. This is the killer reason. This is why it's not going to happen here in this country. These are the lorry movements on an active fracking pad in the States. This is water coming in, toxic chemicals coming in this country. They won't be allowed to put all the toxic waste on site. They'll have to take it away in tankers as well. It just so clearly is not going to happen. And you wonder who is advising Mr. Cameron and Mr. Osborne. And yet, here are the business models. This is a business leader, the chief executive of Gaz de France Suez, and this is the fifth reason why it's very bad. This is the opportunity cost, because in order to make this happen, they have to oppose what you saw in the Terradome and all the things in clean energy. They have to put that in a box, and that's what they're trying to do. There's a civil war going on in the energy industry. I feel it, experience it, live through it every day. These are the kinds of crazy notions that we have to deal with. This man runs a multi-billion-dollar company. He thinks Gas can do everything, heating, electricity, and deal with climate change, because of course it's producing less emissions than coal. But to do that, we have to end all subsidies for renewables, put them in their box. We only need them for a few more years in solar. And where is his top prospect for fracking? He can't frack in France. France has banned fracking. Of course, not wholly because they're worried about the environment. They're equally worried about the health of their nuclear industry. But anyway, they banned it. And so where's his top prospect when he's asked the United Kingdom? There is a whiff of madness about this. But this is what we're up against. And there are days when, writers have this expression, life is often stranger than fiction. And so it appears here because global gas push stalls. That was one day in the Wall Street Journal. Journalists are paying attention. They look at what's happening. It's not rolling out in other countries the way it's supposed to. And what do we get in the Financial Times? The very next day, Chancellor backs gas to fire up Britain. Unconventional gas, of course. So just finally, a few words about oil. Oil is finite. You would never know it when you listen to the mantras from the oil industry, but this is the production profiles in the North Sea. Each one of those pastel shades is a different oil field. You see what happens. You find the big ones earlier, and later on in the piece you find the smaller and smaller ones, and we're well over the peak of production. Bad news for Scotland, or bad news for Britain. But this is what happens time and time again. Most oil-producing countries are over the peak of production. How many people know this in the blizzard of mantras that come about the new age of plenty from the oil industry? There's so much gross irresponsibility that comes from this industry. And yet their answer to that kind of diagram that you just saw is, well, you don't know what you're talking about. There's plenty of oil in Saudi Arabia, and there's plenty of oil in the US shale. Well, I've kind of covered the shale in perfunctory detail. Let's just quickly go to Saudi Arabia. Look at the extent of their infrastructure. Those scenes on the left are the same place, just a few years apart. So they're building cities in the desert. And in order to do this, they're having to burn a lot of oil in electric power plants because they don't have that much gas in Saudi Arabia. They don't call it the empty quarter for nothing, evidently. So in the blue, you've got the consumption domestically. In the grey on the top there, you've got the production of oil in Saudi Arabia, assuming they can maintain it. Let's give them that. And what happens? The green is where we are today. If they keep consuming domestically at the rate they're doing in recent years, then consumption crosses with exports in the late 2020s. That would be rather inconvenient. Saudi Arabia with not a drop of oil to export. And what are they? They know it's a problem, to be fair. They often talk about it, the royal family and senior officials. And what's their proposed solution? Not more oil, nuclear and solar. And this is the capex going up in red of the top 11 oil companies, and this is their production going down in grey. These are real data, but they try so hard to keep this kind of stuff from the public domain. And the neuroscientists, again, are unsurprised by this. The militaries seem better at spotting the threats. This is true in America, it's true here, it's true in Germany. This is a Bundeswehr report on peak oil risk. Peak oil, however, is unavoidable. It's just that we don't like to talk about it. It's not polite. What's the upside of this? Do I think there's a way out of it? I do. The book is called Risk Blindness, which is mostly what I've talked about, but the road to renaissance. And I think there are a number of reasons why we can fashion a road to renaissance. One is the power of context. When leaders see a clear and present danger, which they haven't yet, but they will do when the energy crisis descends, they can act. They did arguably act in the end game of the financial crisis. The speed at which the survival technologies can be mobilized, those of us on the front lines really know this and experience it every day. That building, that development I showed you earlier, that was put up in a couple of months with our partner SSE. So there's optimism to be had here in the way my parents' generation mobilized very fast for war when they had to, surprised everyone. The rise of empathy, Jeremy Rifkin's really alluring vision of the way that we're getting more empathic because of mass communication. Let's hope he's right with that. If he is, then that adds to the prescription for hope. And then in my own experience, Solar Century at the top there, the joy of young people in jobs like this, and then the impact of the technology. Each one of those solar lanterns that we distribute in Africa saves an average of 20% of a family like that, their income over the course of the year, freeing up money for all the other things they can spend it on: education, health, seeds, the job. So final picture. This is what looks so daunting about climate change. This is what we have to do if we're going to have a chance of surviving it. We have to deconstruct that line in red going up. We have to make it go down the other way. A lot of people look at that and say, well, it's going to be too difficult, isn't it? I don't think so. When you look at the power of working with the shock, mobilizing fast, and the social structures and strategies we'll be able to bring together via people power, as well as the technologies that are waiting, the green technologies that are waiting to go to replace the ruinous, suicidal status quo. You're all going to play a role in that, I know. That's why you're here today. I thank you for that, and I thank you for listening to me.